The air burns cold. Your breath fogs before you. In front of you stands a creature that looks almost human, but stronger, broader, carved by the Ice Age itself. His knuckles are scarred from 1,000 hunts. His chest heaves like a furnace, and yet in a few thousand years, his kind will vanish. How does the strongest human species in history lose the battle for survival? What went wrong for Earth's ultimate survivors? This isn't just the story of the Neanderthals. It's the story of us, because in their extinction lies a warning written in bone. The world 50,000 years ago was not made for weakness. It was a battlefield of cold, wind, and hunger, where the sky itself seemed to press down on the earth. Glaciers the size of mountains crawled across Europe, grinding stone to dust. The air stung with frost so sharp it could split skin. And somewhere in that endless white, a tribe moved through the silence. Heavy footprints pressed deep into snow that no sun would melt. They weren't quite like us, broader, shorter, built from denser bone and coiled muscle. When they moved, you could almost hear the weight of survival in their stride. These were the Neanderthals, nature's answer to the Ice Age. To understand them, imagine evolution sculpting a human out of raw endurance. Their chests were wide, rib cages like barrels, lungs so large they could gulp icy air and feed oxygen to massive muscles. Their arms were short but powerful, like compact pistons built for explosive force. When they swung a spear, it wasn't a throw. It was an impact, like striking lightning through fur and flesh. But this wasn't strength for show. It was strength for need. When a blizzard could trap you for days, when a single wound meant death, survival demanded a body that could haul, fight, drag, endure. Every muscle told a story of cold mornings, of hunts that stretched into the dark, of a world where life was earned one heartbeat at a time. This was the forge where the Neanderthal was made, and every scar of the Ice Age left its mark on them. Look closer at their bones. They whisper secrets of purpose. Neanderthals didn't just live in the Ice Age. They were engineered by it. Fossils reveal skeletons denser than ours, thicker, tougher, the biological equivalent of reinforced steel. Their limbs were shorter, their frames compact, conserving heat, storing power. A Neanderthal's grip could crush a modern man's hand like kindling. Their skulls were distinct too. A long, sloped forehead, heavy brow ridge, and wide nose built for freezing air. That nose wasn't just a feature, it was a survival tool. It warmed and moistened icy breaths before they reached their lungs. Evolution gave them every edge it could, turning necessity into design. And then there were their eyes, deep-set, shadowed, watchful. Imagine seeing through a Neanderthal's gaze, scanning frozen plains for movement, reading the faintest track in snow, sensing the tremor of a beast before it charges. Their world was constant vigilance, but it wasn't just about muscle. Their strength was a language, a way of living, communicating, protecting. Every movement carried purpose. They didn't need words for bravery. Their scars spoke for them. If one of them stood in a modern gym, they'd look like a myth come alive. Studies suggest they could bench press nearly 800 pounds, crush bone with a single blow, and sprint faster than most humans could run today. But what's most extraordinary isn't what they could lift. It's what they could endure. Because when the Ice Age tested humanity, the Neanderthals didn't flinch. They were the storm's chosen children, built from ice, hardened by hunger, and carried forward by sheer will. Yet beneath all that power, there was something deeply human. They laughed, they loved, they mourned their dead. In caves scattered across Europe, archaeologists have found flowers buried beside Neanderthal skeletons, tiny blossoms pressed against ancient ribs. That means they cared. They remembered. They felt grief. In their world, affection was survival. A broken leg could end a life, unless someone stayed behind to help you heal. Evidence from sites like Shanidar Cave shows Neanderthals did exactly that. They tended to the injured, shared food, and passed on knowledge through generations. Beneath their rugged exteriors beat hearts capable of empathy. Around their campfires, you can almost hear them, soft voices under the howling wind, the crackle of burning bone. Stories passed from elder to child about the hunt, the cold, the things that moved in the dark. They weren't beasts. They were people, bound by the same flickering light that unites us still. But for all their might, something fragile hid within their strength, a dependence on the old world that had shaped them. Every bone, every breath was tuned to the Ice Age's rhythm. And when that rhythm began to change, so did their fate. Their story wasn't just about survival, it was about balance. Between muscle and mind, instinct and emotion, fire and frost, the Neanderthals had mastered the frozen world. But what happens when the ice begins to melt? Because soon, a new kind of human would arrive. Weaker in body, yet stronger in something unseen. And that shift would change everything. For centuries we mocked them, painting Neanderthals as grunting brutes, dragging clubs through mud. But that caricature couldn't be further from the truth, because behind those thick brows and powerful shoulders lived some of the sharpest minds of the Ice Age. Imagine a small band of Neanderthals stalking a woolly mammoth across a frozen plain. They move in silence, each step measured. One hunter signals with his hand, a subtle flick toward the ridgeline. Another responds with a nod. No words, no shouting, just precision. They already know the plan. These weren't mindless chasers. They were tacticians. Archaeological sites tell us they set traps, used the terrain to corner prey, even lured herds toward cliffs to fall to their deaths. They crafted spears so well balanced they could pierce hide thicker than armor. Their stone blades, chipped from flint and obsidian, were shaped with geometric accuracy, tools of both elegance and lethality, and they worked together. That's the secret most people miss. Neanderthals weren't lone giants battling beasts. They were coordinated units. Hunting a mammoth or cave bear wasn't about brute force. It was choreography. One would bait the creature, another would flank, a third would deliver the killing blow. It was a performance of instinct, courage, and trust in those frozen plains. Intelligence wasn't measured in language or art, it was measured in survival. Every successful hunt was proof of planning, memory, and communication, the kind of mental sharpness we once thought belonged only to us. They didn't just live in the Ice Age, they mastered it, both in body and mind. Step into a Neanderthal shelter, and you'll see the mind at work. Their caves weren't crude holes, they were organized spaces. Evidence shows designated areas for fire, sleeping, and tool-making. Some walls even bore traces of pigment, hinting at early symbolic expression, a flicker of art in the heart of the Ice Age. Their fires were controlled, not chaotic. Charred bones suggest they used flame strategically, to cook, to harden spear tips, to keep predators away. Fire wasn't just warmth, it was power, and they knew how to wield it. The way they processed materials speaks volumes. They softened hides with tools carved from bone, turned sinew into thread, and fashioned necklaces from animal teeth and shells. To us, those trinkets might seem small, but to them it meant identity, belonging, the birth of culture. And yet, for all their brilliance, their intelligence remained grounded in the physical world. They didn't build cities or paint grand murals on stone walls. They didn't dream of gods or destiny, at least not that we know of. Their minds were anchored to the earth, their genius shaped by necessity. But maybe that's what makes them so fascinating. They were practical philosophers of the wild. Every tool, every decision was a reflection of survival logic. They didn't invent for comfort, they invented for continuity. Still, something was brewing on the horizon, a quiet storm of change. A new kind of human was emerging. Thinner, quicker, but thinking differently. And as the Neanderthals perfected survival, their rivals began perfecting imagination. For all their strength and intelligence, the Neanderthals carried a silent disadvantage. They were too specialized for their world. Their muscles, their lungs, their metabolism, all tuned to a cold earth that was about to shift beneath their feet. Their lives demanded immense calories. A single day's hunt might burn more energy than most of us use in a week. When the herds migrated or thinned out, hunger followed. And hunger was an enemy that even strength couldn't fight for long. Meanwhile, their new cousins, Homo sapiens, were spreading fast. Leaner, more social, endlessly curious. They painted caves, carved tools for beauty as much as use, and built networks that stretched across tribes. When famine struck one group, another shared food. When storms came, they moved together. Their connection became their weapon. The Neanderthals didn't fall because they were stupid or weak. They fell because the rules changed, and they didn't. Their brilliance was tied to a single world, one that was fading fast. Still, imagine them watching those newcomers from a ridge, smaller, thinner, less powerful, yet somehow thriving. The Neanderthals might have felt confusion, maybe even awe. For the first time, strength wasn't enough. They were the masters of a vanishing age, kings without a kingdom, and soon the ice would start to melt. The world that once obeyed their might would turn its back. But their story wasn't over yet, because even in their fall, the Neanderthals would leave something behind, something that still breathes inside us today. The world began to thaw. At first it was slow, a trickle of meltwater carving paths through frozen valleys. Then faster, rivers roared where glaciers once stood silent. Forests crept northward, and the great herds, mammoths, woolly rhinos, reindeer, began to wander toward new pastures. For the Neanderthals, it was a quiet apocalypse. Their entire existence was built on the cold, the animals they hunted, the shelters they used, the rhythm of their migrations. As the world warmed, that rhythm broke. The dense, icy plains they mastered became tangled woodlands where ambush hunting was harder. The beasts they relied on vanished or moved beyond reach. Hunger began to whisper through their caves. A Neanderthal could burn 6,000 calories a day just to survive. But now food was scarce, hunts were longer, and every injury could mean death. You can almost hear the silence, the absence of footfalls where herds once thundered. And in that silence, something else arrived. Small, wiry humans from the south, Homo sapiens, spreading like wildfire through the forests and coasts. They came with new tools, new strategies, and an almost reckless adaptability. They painted their walls with dreams, turned bones into flutes, and made alliances that stretched across valleys. The Neanderthals watched. Maybe they fought. Maybe they traded. Maybe they even loved. But beneath it all, the ground was shifting. Not just the Earth's climate, but the balance of power between two human worlds. The Ice Age was ending. And with it, so was the reign of its fiercest children. Picture a small band of Neanderthals huddled around a dwindling fire. The wind outside moans through the trees. Not the deep frozen howl of their ancestors' world, but a softer, wetter sound. Rain, not snow. Their faces glow in the firelight, tired, watchful, knowing. This might be one of the last Neanderthal families on Earth. Genetic evidence tells us that by 40,000 years ago, their numbers had collapsed. Small scattered groups lingered in caves across Spain, France, and Siberia, isolated pockets of a once mighty lineage. Each year, fewer voices echoed in the mountains. But their extinction wasn't a sudden war or catastrophe. It was something slower, sadder, a fading. They likely interbred with Homo sapiens. In fact, you and I carry around 2% of their DNA. So they didn't vanish entirely. They dissolved into us, like mist absorbed by morning light. Still, imagine the emotional weight of that twilight. They watched their traditions die. Their hunting grounds vanish, their children grow fewer. Maybe they told stories by the fire, tales of mammoths in endless winters, of ancestors who ruled the snow. And maybe they realized those stories were no longer theirs. They were witnesses to their own ending, not with fire and blood, but with quiet resignation, as if the world they belonged to had simply decided to move on without them. And in that stillness, the last Neanderthal looked out into a forest full of new sounds and scents, and for the first time knew what it meant to be alone. But here's the twist. The Neanderthals didn't disappear. Not completely. Every time you look in a mirror, you might see a trace of them. A sturdy jawline, a certain resilience in your immune system, even the way your body responds to cold. Their legacy didn't end with extinction. It evolved within us. Modern genetics has revealed something astonishing. That 2% of Neanderthal DNA still shapes who we are. It affects our hair, our sleep, our emotions, even our risk for certain diseases. Their strength, both physical and mental, is woven into our biology like an echo from the Ice Age. And beyond genetics, there's something deeper, a shared story. They remind us that humanity isn't a straight line of progress. It's a tapestry of survival, failure, and adaptation. The Neanderthals weren't our failures. They were our teachers. Their endurance in the face of unimaginable cold and isolation paved the way for us to thrive. When we light a fire, seek shelter, or huddle close against the storm, we're repeating gestures that echo through 400 centuries of memory. Their hands are still in ours. Their breath is still in our lungs. So the next time someone calls them primitive, remember, the brutes of the Ice Age carved the foundation of what it means to be human. And maybe, somewhere deep inside us, that ancient strength still waits, a whisper from the cold, reminding us that we come from survivors. The last Neanderthal died tens of thousands of years ago. No one recorded their names. No one carved their stories into stone. The wind erased their footprints. The glaciers buried their bones. And yet somehow they never truly left us. Because what they built wasn't civilization. It was something deeper, endurance. They survived when the world itself tried to kill them. They thrived in a landscape where cold could split rock, where beasts taller than houses roamed freely, where every day demanded courage just to see another sunrise. And maybe that's the part of them we still carry, that instinct that wakes when everything seems lost, the part of us that refuses to quit, even when the odds make no sense. It's the Neanderthal whisper in your blood saying, keep going. We often talk about human progress, art, science, cities, spaceflight. But before all of that came something simpler, purer survival. The Neanderthals didn't paint the Sistine Chapel, but they lived through the impossible and taught us how to do the same. They showed us that being human isn't about being the smartest or the most advanced. It's about enduring change, loving fiercely, protecting your people, and standing tall in a world that keeps shifting beneath your feet. Their story isn't a tragedy. It's a mirror, because one day we might face our own version of the Ice Age, not of frost, but of heat, chaos, and uncertainty. And when that time comes, the question won't be whether we can invent new tools or build taller cities. It will be whether we can remember what they taught us, how to adapt, how to endure, and how to keep the fire alive. So as you sit here at warm, alive, breathing air your ancestors fought to claim, take a moment, look into the flame of a candle or the glow of your screen, to realize that same light once flickered in a cave 50,000 years ago. Different hands, same hope. If this story moved you, if it made you feel that ancient connection, that quiet pulse of shared humanity, consider joining this journey. Subscribe, share, and stay with us as we uncover more forgotten chapters of who we are and how we got here, because the past isn't gone, it's alive, burning softly in the dark, waiting for someone to listen.